All right, folks, here we go. Welcome back after Friday to football as well, that and whatnot. A couple things before we get started. Thing number one, some of you guys emailing me a panic last night about your quiz and the browser thing and blah, blah, blah. Your screen went white, da, 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 and you had trouble finishing it, whatnot. At about 2 o'clock, when you guys get out of here this afternoon, I will go back and look to see whose test turned in and who had an issue. And if you had an issue and it wasn't turned in, it wasn't graded properly, like it only gave you credit for 3 questions or whatever, you weren't able to complete them, I will contact you through Schoology. And when I contact you through Schoology, I will open up your quiz. All right, what I'll do is I'll just delete whatever was turned in, and I will just have you go back and redo it. I just ask that you have it done by tomorrow night. Okay, if I do that, please have it done by tomorrow night. So great. And again, I apologize. We're all learning this together, folks. We're all learning what works, what doesn't work. Its strengths, which are few between, and its weaknesses. Real quick suggestion there: if you're trying to get my attention, please contact me through CFISD. All right, use my CFISD email. CFISD email is my phone's probably in the living room, in the kitchen. It's probably within 50 feet or so of me, so I'm probably going to be able to hear it. If you contact me through Schoology, I only see that if I'm on my computer logged into Schoology. If I get an email from you, I can sort of address that at the moment. I can run up to my office and see whatever the problem is. And I think for a few people, I did that last night as late as, I think 10:15 was the last email I took care of. I don't prefer to do that, but I will, because again, we're all learning this and we're going to work it. All right, so that's kind of that. Any questions or concerns on that before we move forward? No. All right,
yes,
so I'll contact
very
you.
much so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. What's up?
Yeah, because I was gonna ask you about that today, because like I was taking it and all of a sudden I was like on question 11, it just timed out and I was like, dang, I'm a fail.
Okay, again, if I take a look at that, again, if it times out, you've got 20 minutes, you got 25 minutes to take it. Time out, you got to get it done in the time. I'm talking
No,
if the
I
browser
still had
locks you
13
down.
minutes left.
What's up?
Yeah, I had 13 minutes left on it.
Oh, it played when you had 13 minutes left? Yeah, that's an issue. Okay,
Yeah.
and again, what I'll do is I'm going to take a look at that in about an hour. And when I look at it, if I see a situation like that, I will get in touch with you through Schoology. I'll open it back up. All right? Anybody else at home got an issue? Nope. Cool. All right. So, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Because again, I don't do it from a student's perspective. You guys are going to know about that more than I am. And that's sort of where I'm learning, like the web browser lock, all that crap, that I'm finding out whether it works or doesn't work. We're figuring that out. Yeah. That's why I've been a little bit flexible here. Yeah. If you let it run out, it just turns it in automatically. Okay. Well, that's all we brought. But again, we're going to, stay with me here, guys. We're going to figure this out as we work our way. All right. And again, you're not going to get penalized for technical issues. I'll sort of work around. Okay, anything else on there before we get started? No. All right, thank you. Hey, by the way, thanks for not having your parents overflood my inbox with emails. Appreciate it. Usually there's one or two, but apparently it didn't happen. I was very thankful for that. Because again, this is a big boy, big girl class. Big boy, big girl class. We talk about big boy, big girl issues. And another thing that's very, very important is that we respect everybody's opinion. No matter how alike it is to yours or how different it is from yours. An opinion that's alike or different doesn't make it more valid or less valid. It's just their opinion and their beliefs. So thank you for respecting everybody on that. So with that being said, today we're going to talk about nature versus nurture. We're going to take a look at it from the nature perspective. Monday, we're going to take a look at it from the nurture perspective. Tuesday, we're going to have our second test. So make sure that you have your outlines ready to turn in on Tuesday. You guys in here, hand them to me. You guys at home, please turn them in, make it a PDF, make it a Word doc, please turn it in. All right, any other questions or concerns before we get started? No. All right, let's get some more controversy going. Questions to consider. Hypothetical question. You're on a boat. You have 2 kids. Either both boys or both girls. You decide which way you want to go with that. 2 boys and 2 girls. One of them is 5, and one of them is a 1-year-old. The boat tips over. One of these children will drown. They will be dead. One of them you can rescue. Who do you rescue? The 5-year-old or the 1-year-old? Show of hands in here that you would rescue the 5-year-old. Show of hands in here that you would rescue the baby. All right, at home, we're gonna take this bit by bit. So if you guys want to jump in, you can on this. All right, for those of you guys that would save the 5-year-old, what is your argument to save the 5-year-old? Go ahead. What do you got?
For the 5-year-old, I kind of know what I'm getting. The 1-year-old,
You just met this baby, and they could be a disaster later. So.
for the 1-year-old, like I already know what I'm doing with the 5-year-old.
But maybe you don't like what you're getting.
That's the thing. That's a variable. So I'm saying in most cases, I'd probably do the 5-year-old. If I really don't like the 5-year-old, I'd probably go 1-year-old.
Okay, so you're playing God on personal choice. Yeah.
The 5-year-old actually knows about what's happening.
Right. So they're not conscious. They don't know that they're about to die.
Yeah.
But then on the other, couldn't I make the argument on the other side that the 5-year-old would have PTSD, even though they survived? Is it possible that they could have PTSD? The baby wouldn't remember it. So there's that too. Anybody else want to say the 5-year-old? What?
They've had more experience. They're just a combination of more things already.
So the baby's just brand new, hasn't made any neural connections, so they're worthless. Okay, that's fair. Anybody else? Yeah.
5-year-olds are like growing up and being a contrary adult. So I think you probably have like a better return on investment.
So you already invested. So it's just it's a cost analysis, cost benefit analysis. You've already invested in the 5-year-old. Sure. Anybody at home have an opinion that you want to save the 5-year-old?
Babies suck.
Well, that's how they feed. Yeah, they kind of a suckling sort of thing. But again, when you're comparing me, you guys haven't hung around too many 5-year-olds. If you think they're just a little piece of wonderful. Who's going to save the baby? Why would you want to save the baby?
I got it.
So maybe there's this instinctual thing that the baby's more helpless and needs you more. Okay, at home, what'd you have at home? Did you want to save the baby?
All right, so I'd save the baby because I'm tired of the 5-year-old. I've been around it too long. The baby
had a good
is like
run,
brand
yeah,
new. It's
5
like,
years.
okay, start over, make it better.
Yeah, and maybe you screwed up with the 5-year-old, so it's kind of a control alt delete. You know what you learned from the 5-year-old, you can use on the baby. What else?
I'm looking at this as more of like a physical thing. Like I don't know the whole situation with boat sinking, but
Nobody
the
does.
baby's lighter, so it's easier.
So it's easier for you.
Yeah.
5-year-old's gonna drag you down.
Yeah.
There you go. What?
I would think the 1-year-old. The 5-year-old is
Again, they'll have the PTSD and everything else. Yeah, when my daughter was a little baby, I used to tell her when she screwed up, she's like 4 or 5 or 6. I go, you know, your older brother, Timothy used to do that. She's like, who's Timothy? I go, exactly. He screwed up. Yeah. What'd you have? You're going to save the baby too?
So honestly, I was gonna do the same thing. Like the 5-year-old, see the baby around, really cool liabilities. Like it's always gonna be like.
Well, you know what? In reality, all children are liabilities.
But like the baby is just like, oh yeah, it's when he went to a farm, there, you know.
Went to a farm. A puppy that got hit by the truck. All right. By the way, there's no answer to this. There's no real answer. And again, you don't have 20 minutes to debate it either when the kid's dying. Who would you, a little bit what we talked about yesterday. Who would you rather marry? Somebody older than yourself or younger than yourself? We can take this group by group. Ladies, older or younger? Gentlemen. Older.
Younger. Older. Younger, what you mean?
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. What are you talking about?
A little bit bit of confusion in the peanut gallery at home. What we have here,
Like
for the
younger or
most part-
same age. You don't want older.
For the most part, what you're seeing is women want someone older and more mature. Guys, for the most part, again, this changes with 16, 17, 18. You have to use the perspective of a parent or a mate for the rest of your life. It's a little bit tough. Guys tend to go with a little bit younger. Who's going to mourn more for the death of their child, the dad or the mom? Ow. Ow. Why the mother? Why would the mother mourn more than the father? Oh, stop with the whole carrying it in your body thing. All right. Okay, women will express their emotions a little bit more. Men are just as emotional. We'll just express it a little bit more. It's another reason the mom's going to be a little bit more mourning. It's another reason. There's a limited window. You're exactly right. There's a limited window that she's only got from, the teen years until about maybe her late 30s, early 40s. And also, if she gets pregnant, let's say she's 5 months pregnant, can she get pregnant again at the same time? No, not that medical science has shown to be true. She can't do that. Now, if I'm a guy and I got one woman and she's 5 months pregnant, can I go get other girls pregnant at the same time? Yeah. So really it comes down to that eggs are relatively precious and sperm are very, very cheap. Very, very, very cheap. So as a result of that, women are more invested in what they do. But again, when we get locked into things like this, when we look at these sort of nature versus nurture arguments, sometimes it locks us into an argument that maybe isn't necessarily true. And it leads to some stereotypes. I'll give you an example. I was a single father with my daughter from about the age of about 1.5 or 2. I had full custody of her. Well, it's kind of shared. She would see her mom on the weekends when I lived in Michigan. And then when I moved down to Texas, I went through the process and I got full custody of her, where she would visit her mom at Christmas and during the summertime. I would make sure that she would visit her mom at that time. Now, as I tell you this, that this little 1.5-year-old baby, toddler, is given to her father and not her mother, what are you just immediately thinking? What's the first thing that comes to your mind about what her, and you go, say whatever you want. You're not going to offend. But what's the first thing to come to your mind about what her mother must be like?
Must be abusive because like typically in sports they try to have the child.
So mom's obviously beating the kid. What else?
She's like a drug user.
So she's a drug addict that beats the kid. Anything else? What do you got? What's that?
Not reliable.
Not reliable? Is the word you said? Not reliable, drug addict, user. She can't take good care of it. All these things, yeah. She doesn't have a job to provide for the child, patience, maturity, anything like that. All right, notice that immediately we think that if I have custody of her, mom must be a disaster. Nobody thinks of this. Maybe I'm a pretty good dad. What? Huh? What? Maybe I'm just really qualified as a great father. No, mom has to be a drug addict in a crack house somewhere in order for me to get custody. What about the fact that I'm an educator? I'm a teacher. What about the fact that she would be going to school right across the street from me? What about all these factors of, no, mom's got to be a disaster. So a lot of times when we're looking at nature versus nurture arguments, and we're taking a look at roles of men and women, are these truly the roles of men and women, or are these societal expectations of roles of men and women that we just sort of go with? And by the way, I'm a pretty good dad. Granted, raising a little girl as a single father wasn't the easiest thing in the world. Issues I never thought about before. When does she use the public restroom by herself versus putting a jacket on her and getting her in the men's restroom? How do I fix her hair? I don't know anything. So I just dressed her in pink and purple and butterflies and princesses and hope that worked. And now she's rebelled against all that. But that's sort of the idea. Men we think are not qualified, women we think are more. Let's take a look at evolutionary questions right here. Women are more color sensitive than men. That's a fact. There's no dispute to that. I'm not saying all women are more color sensitive than all men. There are some men that have more color sensitivity than women. But in general, women are more color sensitive than men. About 9% of the male population is colorblind. It's 0.7% of the female population. Why are women less likely to be colorblind? Let's go back to caveman days. Yeah. Right. So as they're gathering, what is the importance of being able to see color while I'm gathering? Right. If I pick the poisonous berry, what happens to my family and my DNA? It's gone. It doesn't move forward. So the women who had the bad eyesight, that DNA doesn't go forward. It only goes forward to good eyesight, goes forward there. Why are men less likely to ask for directions? Don't say we're stubborn. What? What are we more likely to have internally? Instinctual or intuitional, but we have a sense of direction. We tend to have a better sense of direction. I, as a male, I have to know where true north is. That way, by the way, because I need to know where I am. Because again, you go back to caveman days. What was the job of the man? You go out and do what? Hunt. And then after I hunted, I had to do what with it? Bring it home. And if I don't bring it home, what happens to my family? They die. My DNA doesn't go forward. Okay, so it's very, very important that I'm able to do that. Now, if we fast forward with humans the next 500 years from now, is it very, very possible that a man's sense of direction might start to diminish quite a bit now that you have GPS and everything else? Very likely that that's going to happen. Women are more likely to remember a name or a face. We talked about both sides of the brain before, but if you go back to caveman days, what was a woman's job? They had to take care of whom? Kids, the babies, the family, get along with neighbors. That was more of their job. If you didn't do it, it didn't go on. Why are men more competitive? Again, in general, why are men more competitive? Back in caveman days, resources were what? Scarce. And if you didn't compete, you did what? You died, you starved. Okay, now again, I'm not saying all men are more competitive than all women. My wife is way more competitive than I am. If my wife sits down at a board game during Christmas time, she will tell the children, I am not your mother right now. I'm here to destroy you. Whereas I'm more like, here, you can have some of my pieces. I don't care. The only person I'm competitive against is my wife because it's hilarious when she loses. When we look at men growing facial hair, again, showing testosterone, women with the brighter features, showing that sort of brightness, that fullness, that healthiness. Men using fewer words, better focus because we had so little to do. You go out, you hunt. This was all the way up to the 50s and 60s. You went to work, you came home, you had your cocktail, mom took care of dinner. You don't bother dad. Women are better listeners, more empathetic because they were always expected to. But again, we get locked into, is this really what we are? Or are we following societal roles on this? More stuff on men and women if you want to take a look at it throughout the PowerPoint. You're happy to. Okay, so when we talk about evolutionary psychology, we're talking about hopefully what happens is the good genes move forward. Bad genes die out. When I talked about evolutionary psychology before, I talked about men getting taller, right? Did I cover that in here? The men are getting taller? Okay. So what we hope for is that the good traits go forward and the bad traits die up. Now again, evolutionary psychology does not happen overnight. There's less racism in the country today than there was 50, 60, 70 years ago. That's just a fact. The problem is when that was happening 50, 60, 70 years ago, nobody looked twice at it because it was somewhat of a norm. And not everybody had a cell phone to take every picture of it, every video of it, but it's always been around. But what we're hoping is as time goes forward and younger generations take over, racism will get a little bit less and a little bit less and a little bit less, but it doesn't happen overnight. How many of you guys have that older aunt, uncle, grandfather, great-grandfather that just says some really inappropriate things around the dinner table? You just sort of go, whoa, that's messed up. Do you try to correct them and change their point of view? No, we're just, we'll die. Those genes will be gone. But these are people that were around when schools were still segregated, when you couldn't eat at a certain lunch counter, 50 years ago. So it takes a while, and even when they're around, they're still going to go to H-E-B and spew the venom and whatever else. Eventually, it will die out, but it takes time. So when we're talking about evolutionary psychology, this is a pretty slow process that's happening. The good traits are more attractive, but then what's a good trait? That's even changing. Marriage, back during the medieval times, what was the purpose of marriage? What's up? What was it? Reproduce, bind families together, reproduction, maybe, get some farm equipment from the other side, whatever. But it was just about making babies, making farm workers and everything else. Now marriage, in order to marry, you got to meet on so many different, it's not just about reproduction, it's about, is he my best friend? Does he understand me? A good listener, able to provide, a protector, and it's just this big, big list, which is never what the institution was designed for. Again, it's better, it's more improved, but is it possibly outdated? Where a lot of people sort of have questions on that. Which is why we have a divorce rate that's higher today than maybe it was 50 years ago. Is that good or is it bad? Some people will go, well, that's terrible. People are getting divorced. Some people will go, that's good. People aren't staying in bad marriages. And then the definition of what's attractive. 40, 50 years ago in a high school, the guy who was the varsity quarterback was attractive because his family protector could take care of you. Now the kid who can program an app and fix your iPhone, and he's suddenly much more attractive today. I'm not saying more attractive than both of them, but there's a little bit of a change that's sort of taking place here on what we deem as attractive, on what's looked at as appropriate, and all these things. So when we look at evolutionary psychology, let's take a look at some of these statistics, see if you can imagine what the answers to this are. Attitudes about sex, results of studies done over the last 30 or so years. 80% of adult bookstore customers, when I say adult bookstore customers, basically talking about porn. Most of the bookstore customers are what? Men or women? Fill it in. Men. 53% of college blank and 30% of college blank agreed that it was okay for two people to have sex if they really liked each other, even if they didn't know each other that long. Who's the bigger number, guys or girls? Men. Well, let's think about this. In survey after survey, men have claimed to have had more sex with more women, up to 5 times more than women have claimed to have with men. So, there's something got to be going on here. Either guys are overinflating their numbers, girls are underinflating their numbers, or some girls really getting around.
Or the guys are getting with the guys.
What's that?
Or the guys are getting with the guys.
Well, that wouldn't sort of go in with this survey. But when we're taking a look at this particular thing, why do guys tend to overinflate and girls tend to underinflate? Why? Why would that be the case?
So, like, girls are more embarrassed, okay, like more shame.
There's a
Like,
scarlet.
how the
Is a guy wearing a scarlet letter? No, girls wearing the scarlet letter. And if you got two guys in a locker room bragging to one another, yeah, it was a turn that I dumped her, and we were best friend, and I did this. And everybody goes, yeah, you're cool, way to go. What if as that conversation was going on in the locker room, some guy went up, gentlemen, that's really disrespectful, and you shouldn't treat him like that. I mean, if someone talked about your sister that way, would you be okay with it? What happens if a guy interrupts a conversation like that? How will his buddies treat him? What's wrong with you, gay?
Tell him to shut up.
Yeah, exactly. Why can't you stand up and say that? Because you look at it in a weird way. My two boys were in junior high, and they're having a little discussion, as much as two boys in junior high can have a discussion. And Quincy was bragging about how many girlfriends he had. Got so many girlfriends. I'm so cool. I had her, and she was my girlfriend, she was my girlfriend, I had this girlfriend. And he's making fun of Duncan because Duncan had like one girlfriend. And Quincy had all these girlfriends. And he's bragging about it. So cool. Look at all my girlfriends. Stud. And then Duncan looks at me very sad. And when Duncan's getting beat up in a conversation, occasionally he tags me in. And he tags me, I go, Duncan, you some He's like, yeah. So Quincy, you know why you've had so many girlfriends? Because I'm a stud. I go, no, because so many girls have gotten tired of you. So many girls have left you. You can't hold on to a girl. That's your problem. That's why there's been so many. You get played. He's like, what? Duncan's like, yeah, you're a loser. Everyone hates you. And you feel a little bit better about yourself. A number isn't necessarily a good thing because you got to be able to hold on. It's not to get, it's to hold on. But again, this has nothing to do with sexuality either. This is gender. Gay men are more into casual relationships, put more of an emphasis on physical attractiveness than gay women do, who look more at the holistic picture, more at the relationship, long term. So the conclusion is that men and women are different, but the danger is when a guy seems to just, come on, just kidding, women don't necessarily see it that way. I'm about to shock some of you gentlemen right now. Be quiet for a second. I'm about to shock you when I ask these ladies a question. Ladies, let me ask you this question. A guy, you don't really know him, maybe you do know him or whatever, maybe he's a little bit older. A guy refers to you as hot. Man, you're hot. Ladies, is that a compliment? No. Why is that not a compliment? Why is it not a compliment for a guy to call you hot?
Because I don't want you to think of me based off of looks. I want you to be like, yo, your personality fire, and I stand by that.
Right, and also when they refer to you as hot, they're basically defining you as a what?
No,
An object. An object. That's who you are. That's how I define you, by your looks. That's it. You are hot. And I know some of you guys right now are thinking, I'd like to be called hot. What's wrong with that? Really? You'd like to be called hot? You'd like to be called hot? Would you really like that? You're at work late, you're by the copy machine, some 330-pound boss of yours, some guy comes up to you, presents himself to you, hey, Tommy, you're hot. Would you really like that? Does that really make you feel
The
good?
homies say that and I accept the compliment.
If it was from a girl, that'd be pretty dope, right? I mean, I don't know.
See, again, but that's your problem. I'm not saying it's your problem, but that perception of it, that it's great. So if I would like it, they would like it. No, there's two totally different existences that are going on. And again, this becomes a difficult thing that you guys are going through because you are living in the time of Me Too, which is a fantastic thing, by the way. And women are getting ready to take over this planet, which is fantastic. But at the same time that you girls are being raised and being told to be yourself and be proud of who you are and don't let anybody else objectify you, bum, 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 bum. At the same time, we're handing these teenage boys these smartphones with 24-hour access to pornography, which is objectification, objectification, objectification. And now you're stuck in a position of, wait, I'm supposed to respect myself, but he's attracted to that. What am I supposed to be? You guys are like, I'm supposed to respect her, but he's supposed to respect him. You know, what's it supposed to be? So for both sides, it's very, very confusing. It's a very confusing thing that you have going on all together. And then when we think about things like sexual harassment, is it possible for a guy to be sexually harassed? Sure it is. Are they less likely to report it? Yeah, because they're told they're supposed to be able to take care of themselves. But can they truly take care of themselves? When it comes to child protective services, if a girl is looked at as sexually abused, she is up to, I think it's 23 times more likely to have help arrive than a guy, because as a guy, you can take care of yourself. Can you really? You're a little teenage guy. All right, so again, when we talk about what men and women are looking for, women tend to, and this, by the way, this is cross-culturally around the world. Women tend to look for healthy and fertile appearing, youthful appearance, casual relationships. Guys tend to, I'm sorry, that's guys. My apologies. Men tend to look for healthy and fertile appearing, youthful appearance, casual relationships. Women, long-term relationships, mature, healthy. Now, does this mean that there are no women that are in a casual relationship? Of course not. Some women are very much into it. Does this mean that no guy wants a long-term relationship? Of course not. There's exceptions to these rules, but in general trends are this. So again, the idea that sperm are cheap and eggs are precious. But is this really what we are? Or are we setting these sort of expectations for it? You know, your parents have passed it on to you. I'm sure a lot of you girls have heard this leaving the house on a Friday night. Hey, Missy, come in here. What are you wearing? Check, no, you're not wearing that. You button that up. You don't do that. No. You're going to send a message to guys as if cleavage changes us into werewolves. Has any guy had that conversation with your dad before you left the house on a Friday night? Hey, son, you get in here. Those pants are too tight. You go up and put on some loose pants because girls ain't going to be able to control themselves around you. We don't have that conversation. And the sad thing is, as silly as that conversation seems, there are court cases where women are the victim of sexual assault. And Exhibit A is, Your Honor, this is the outfit she was wearing. A woman should be able to walk down Main Street with no clothes on and no guy should say anything. But is that the world we live in? Or is it because of what's inside of us? Or is it based on environmental expectations? This is the nature nurture argument. So as we're going through this and we look at these different things, are we doing what's expected of us, or are we doing what comes from within us? For example, we have phobias about spiders and snakes. Most of us scared of spiders and snakes, but we're not afraid of guns and electricity. Why are we not afraid of guns and electricity, which are far more dangerous? Why aren't we scared of them? Well, it's more common in our daily lives. There's a lot of spiders. You can bring out your wall. There's a lot of spiders there and snakes within your yard. But what do I think I have control of? There's the word. What do I have over guns and electricity? I have what? If I want the electricity off, I do what? Flip off the switch. I have a gun. I can decide whether I shoot it or not. I have control. Now, do I have control over other people's guns? Not so much. But we think, oh, come on, you got a license for it. You filled out a form. You must be a responsible person. So we think that we have control over that versus spiders and snakes. You go to sleep, suddenly the spider right in your mouth and nothing you can do about it. Somebody flushes their boa constrictor down the toilet. You sit down and you do it. No control over that. Sleep tight. All right. So when we look at this nature versus nurture debate, what's pre-wired and what is societal? And when it comes to psychology, again, it depends on which side you go on. The behaviorist says everything is reward, punishment, reward, punishment, reward, punishment. The evolutionary theorist says it's you are born a certain way and that certain thing is predestined to the rest of your life. But most psychologists come down to, for most things, personality development, all these other things, it's about a 50-50 split, with the exception of intelligence. It's a little bit different, but we'll get to that. But it's about a 50-50 split. That half of who you are is pre-wired, and half of who you are is your environment. But here's where it gets tricky. can your pre-wiring impact what your environment becomes? If I win the genetic lottery and I'm born unbelievably beautiful, am I going to be treated differently than someone who wasn't born that way? Yeah. So it's very possible that my pre-wiring can impact it. It can impact it in a good way. I get more attention. It could impact it in a bad way. People don't respect me for the mind or whatever else. But it can have this impact on what our nature becomes. So when we talk about genetics, and I'm not really concerned too much with the biology of this, but just in general, 99.9% of every human is exactly like every other human. The only real variables in any of us is our height, our hair color, skin tone, fat cells that we have, muscle development, bone structure, susceptibility to disease, depression, anxiety, whatnot. That's all 0.1%. We're all taking in oxygen. We're all kicking out carbon dioxide. I don't care where you're from. I don't care what your socioeconomic status is. We all take that in. We all have this need to be heard, to be loved, to be respected. We all have that. I don't care what country you come from, what culture you come from. The sense of belonging. We all have that. So as much as we go, we're all different, we're all really alike. So this idea of natural selection, these good things, the good things, hopefully in life, in the evolutionary perspective, the good genes go forward, bad genes don't. If I am the short-necked giraffe, I don't move on because I can't get to the food supply. If I'm the light-skinned rat, more likely that the hawk is going to see me, I'm not going to survive, so we're going to have more of the dark-skinned rats, any other sort of variation like that. This just goes back to Darwin, natural selection, and everything else. The attractive genes are going to go forward. But then the question becomes, again, what's an attractive gene? Does that change over time? The night that you needed to have the sword to protect your home. Ladies, can you hunt and gather on your own now? Sure you can. Get a job, get your paycheck, go to H-E-B, you hunt and you gather. Ladies, can you protect yourselves now? Sure you can. Get ADT to take care of your home, buy a handgun, take self-defense classes, whatever. So if a guy's simple brawn or providing isn't enough, what do they have to be in order to be that mate? And vice versa with the woman. Can she now be an earner? Does she have to bake an incredible pie in order for me to be attracted to her, or can I cook myself? Do I need that to complete me? We're starting to see a change in this sort of selection that's going forward. This idea of biological preparedness as well. There's this attraction to excitement when we're younger. But then as we get older, we want a little bit more security. It's why the young girls like the bad boys, because they're exciting. But what you realize is that bad guy that takes all those risks and everything else, his DNA is less likely to go forward. You know whose DNA is going forward? Cowards. People who won't jump off the cliff and into the water. People who stay inside the cave during a lightning storm. Those are the people whose DNA is going forward because they're more cautious as opposed to the bigger risk takers. So as a result, what's looked at as attractive has been mutated. It's been changing over time, but this doesn't change overnight. And we have an incredible time of change happening in this country right now. You know, when we sit there and we go, why isn't there a woman president yet? I mean, come on, it's 2020. Well, let's think about it. That meant she probably would have had to go to college 40, 50 years ago. You're talking about going to college in the 70s. In the 70s, was it common for a woman to go to med school, go to law school, anything like that? No. You're against the grain. So the idea of how many people you had to choose from, you've got a much, much smaller pool. As time goes forward, that qualified pool, not that there aren't qualified women, but the pool is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's more likely this is going to happen. Change takes time. The good needs to rise up. The bad needs to die off. It doesn't happen overnight. And it sucks because we're very impatient people. We're very impatient people, and especially when people are afraid of change. There's a backlash effect to it. That's too much change. I like tradition. I like the way it was. Change is scary. Change is scary. So again, mutations are when we have these new things that become desirable. Again, intelligence, sense of humor. Not really a big requirement back in the 50s. You had to have a job, you had to be able to provide, so we could live in the suburbs, whatever else. But now you got to be a little bit more than that. Both sides. She doesn't have to be able to cook. He can cook too. Do the laundry. He can do laundry. My wife doesn't know, not that she doesn't know, she refuses to sew on a button. If she has a shirt, the button has fallen off, she's like, throw out the shirt. I mean, that's still the button. So as a man, I'm saving the shirt, even though traditionally maybe that's not my role. But are our roles what they used to be as well? So when we take a look at behavior genetics, twin studies are amazing. We love twin studies, especially identical twins, because identical twins have the exact same DNA. It is one sperm hitting one egg that splits off. I've got two babies with the exact same DNA. So if they're separated at birth, I can see intelligence and all these other things about their personality. It's fantastic to look at. Fraternal twins are also pretty cool because fraternal twins were both 6 at the same time and 11 at the same time and 15 at the same time. So their environment's pretty much the same. So you can see the difference between their DNA difference and their environment difference. So that's pretty cool too. Now the problem with twin studies though, when I'm separating twins at birth, I mean immediately, if I just say to separate twins at birth, does anybody see a problem with that? Problem with separating twins? What's the problem with separating twins at birth? What's that?
It's not ethical.
You live, what? It's a brother. You have a brother. You have a sister. You don't get to live with them. Anybody seen the, it was on CNN, I think it premiered a year ago. If I'm not mistaken, it's on Hulu now. Three Identical Strangers. Everybody see the documentary, Three Identical Strangers? Three Identical Strangers. This happened back in the 1970s. It was this orphanage in New York City. And they took in the kids and then they would, adopt them out and everything else. But what they did was this pair of triplets, they adopted them out to 3 different families. And strangely enough, one of the families that they adopted them out to was a working class family. The other one was a middle class, white collar family. And then the other one was a very, very wealthy family. And these identical triplets always had these doctors showing up every 6 months, just checking them, seeing how they were doing and everything else. These guys go off to college. 2 of the guys went off to college and they ended up meeting each other at different campuses because somebody, man, I have a friend who looks just like you. And they met each other like, we look just, and they did a test and they realized that they were twins. And then they got on TV and everything. And this other guy goes, wait a second, those 2 guys look just like me. And in their 20s, they're reunited as triplets. But what was discovered was that this place that was adopting these kids out didn't just do it with these 3. They did it with a lot of pairs of twins against the wishes of the parents that dropped them off. This is a very, very unethical thing to do. But the data was amazing that came out of it. But it was a very, very unethical thing to do, to take these brothers away from each other. But in doing so, you can see that the intelligence of them varied a great deal while they were growing up. But then when they got into their 20s, their intelligence came a little bit more close to one another. So how much does environment have to do with it versus what you naturally have and everything else? So twin studies are very, very fascinating when we're doing this. When we're talking about heritability, when we're talking about DNA and stuff like that, well, a lot of it depends on your environment. Because if I'm looking at how much does DNA affect you, I can only really get a read of that if everybody's in the exact same environment. I can't compare people from different socioeconomic classes. That becomes a little bit difficult to do, because if I take these seeds and put them in poor soil or put them in enriched soil, the differentiation between the seeds is going to pretty much be the same. But all of these are going to get better. All of those are going to get a little bit worse. So we got to take the environment into the equation. Even when it comes to our own environment, your at-home environment. How many of you guys have ever been sitting around the dinner table, looking at your brothers and sisters, and thinking to yourself, how the hell am I related to any of these people? How are we possibly, what is the day that I'm going to learn that I was adopted? There's no way that you guys are my family. Well, because yes, you come from a similar DNA pool, but there's such a variety in the way that you grew up. You're not all growing up the same. If you are the oldest child, you had different parents than what the youngest child had, because the oldest child had new parents, didn't know what they were doing. Compare in your family. If you've got multiple children in your family, think of how many pictures were taken of the oldest child during their youth compared to the youngest child. Oldest child, oh my God, they're walking. Oh my God, they're doing this. Oh my God, it's their play. Oh my God, it's their T-ball game. Youngest child, yeah, you've seen that. Whatever. And they're less likely to take pictures. And it's not that it's important that they don't love it, but they realize the oldest child, I got to watch everything they do. But then they realize a lot of those battles weren't worth it in the end, so they don't have it with the youngest child. Not to mention that the youngest child is sometimes partially raised by the oldest child. The oldest child didn't have any other siblings to look up to, didn't have any other siblings to see if they make mistakes and everything else. So even though you grow up in the same household, you grow up with different environments. So I've got different DNA and I've got a little bit of different environments. Studies will show this to be true, that if I take you and one of your brothers and sisters, take you both out of the family, and then I take you and some stranger off the street, your personality of the stranger off the street will correlate to be just about the same as a random brother or sister. Now again, some of us are very close to our brothers and sisters. Some of us have a brother or sister we're very close to and we're just like them. And some of us have a brother or sister that we're just like, how is this? Mom, tell me you cheated. We have no idea how they're like this because it's different DNA. And even though we're in the same household, it's different environment. I don't treat all my children the same. Hell no, they're different people. Some of my kids, when it comes to their grades, I'll look at their grade card at the end of the semester. All right, cool. This is the best you can do. Cool. That's it. And some of my kids, are you eligible? Are you still going to be eligible? Did you get that turned in? Do I need to talk to your teacher? Because they need a little bit more of a push. When you complain, my parents don't treat us the same. You're not the same person. Of course, they're not going to treat you the same. So when we take a look at this heritability, this idea that nature enables nurture, who you are, is going to have an impact on your environment. Some babies are wonderful babies. They're just lovey and sweet, eyes open and everything else. Just want to cuddle. And some babies are temperamental little things. That it's hard. You just, okay, just quiet, and you're going to treat them differently. You're going to treat them a little bit differently because they're a little bit harder versus a little bit easier. Who we are, and again, if I'm a smart child, my parents are probably going to read to me more. If I'm a more athletic child, I'm probably more likely going to sign up for sports. So a lot of time, the DNA that I have impacts the environment that I create. So it's hard to isolate, is this just nature or is it nurture when you have this idea that nature enables the nurture? Your level of attractiveness, your level of ability, who you hang around. If you're an intelligent person, you're going to hang around other people taking AP and dual credit classes so they know what it's like. Well, folks, if I walk by the cafeteria, if I walk by the Cypress Woods cafeteria and I look down, will I see some tables of just white students? Will I see some tables of just black students? Of just Hispanic students? Of just Asian students? What the hell is Jim Crow going on in 77429? Why do we have that type of segregation? Well, why? Why would we have it?
We tend to like to hang around people who are like that.
Yes. If I'm unattractive, am I going to hang around beautiful people? No, I want to hang around my type. I'm going to make fun of the beautiful people. I want to hang around people that have a similar culture to me, a similar idea. And it's no different than if I'm a football player, I'm going to hang around with other football players. If I'm in theater, I'm going to hang around with other people in theater. If I work at Chick-fil-A, I'll hang around with my friends at Chick-fil-A. They know what it's like to have that boss, have that manager, whatever. So again, we do this and we put ourselves with people like that. Our family, we don't necessarily have this choice, but with our friends, it matches more with our personality. And then our personality adapts to our friends. And it becomes this chicken and the egg argument again and again. You know, do your friends impact who you are? Or do you impact who your friends are? Or is it sort of cycling all together? So again, when it comes to somebody's temperament, this is very, very important. Cool, let me get through this. When it comes to our temperament, the temperament is very important. I told you guys about the marshmallow test. You have one marshmallow an hour. Okay, good. All right. You have to take into account a lot of things. The child who is 5, the child who is 5 and is impulsive at 5 is going to be impulsive at 15 and at 25. The child who is more patient at 3 is more likely to be patient at 13. And at the same time, the child that receives love at 7 is going to be a more loving 17-year-old. The child that had anxiety at 6 going to be an anxious 16-year-old. You don't learn any more in life than you do from 0 to 5. So who I am as a child is going to impact what my environment is. I might have mentioned this before, but let me say it again. If you grew up in an I love you family, that family that just says, I love you all the time, love you, son, love you, mom, can't wait to see you, love you. Everybody goes about the day, comes back, and talks about how much they love each other. Or you grew up in a family where, my family personally, love wasn't really said a lot, it was implied. You know, they let me live there. They took care of me. You know, they went to my games and stuff like that. They loved me. We just didn't really say it a lot. So you get one person who grows up in the I love you family. You get somebody else who grows up in the love is implied family. And they're together for about 3 weeks and one person, oh, this is amazing. I love you. How do you think the other person's going to react? What the hell? It's very intense. Or it could be, oh my God, I've been missing this, been wanting this. Our environment impacts who we become. And it makes us us. But also who we are impacts what our environment becomes. Some of you guys complain about your parents. And my parents just don't understand. They just don't understand. I mean, come on, all I did was burn down the house. You burn down the house, you're going to raise your voice a little bit. It's going to come up a little bit. You know, so we got to think, our actions impact our environment at the same point that our environment is impacting our actions. And all these things sort of come together. Again, the Stanford Marshmallow Test, whether I mentioned it or not in the test, what they discovered was socioeconomic standing had a lot to do with this test. It had a whole lot to do with this test. That when you had kids who were raised poor, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, whoever, kids who were raised poor were more likely to eat that second marshmallow because they were used to broken promises. One in the hand is worth 2 that are promised. You had to take what you had. And that impulsiveness that started at 3, 4, 5 continued at 15, 16, 17. Do I need to study for the test or live for the moment? So socioeconomic has more to do with it than anything else. All right? Any questions on any of that? Nope. Got through it all? Yeah. Okay.
Like a ton of babies and isolated them for like 2 years. So they eventually create their own family.
Well, we're actually going to talk about that when we get to development. They had back in the 80s during the Cold War, there were these orphanages that were just overrun with kids because communism's falling and just had orphanages. And then what you had is you had like one nurse that was responsible for like 22 kids. So the baby would cry or whatever. The nurse would get there when they had time to get there, but then as soon as they went to the next kid. So first off, the kid learns I can't trust when I need someone, they're not there. So they had trust issues growing up. But all they learn as a language is the babbling of the other kids. And that becomes their norm because language is all about mimicking somebody else. And it's the reason why if you got like a little baby, like a 2 or 3 year old baby and they're wanting to talk, the last thing you should do is talk to them like a baby. Hey, little baby, what do you want your baba? Here's your baba. If you talk to them like that, they're like, oh, that's what language is, and I need to sound like that. Versus if you talk to a baby like, oh, baby, would you like your bottle? Is your bottle important to you? Here's your bottle. Their language is going to develop differently, which is why babies have accents and all those other things. That's why sometimes you'll see a 5-year-old in kindergarten. You go, how old are you? I'm 5 years old. I was 4, but I'm 5. You talk like a baby. Yes, no, how old are you? Yeah, I'm 5. What's up? Because that's how they've been talked to. So when you have babies surrounded by babies, 93% of communication is nonverbal. So like a dog or whoever else, they're going to lock more onto that nonverbal communication. Back to the orphanage, I was watching a documentary on it, and this couple had adopted a couple of these babies out of a Romanian orphanage. And as they were driving home, the couple thought that they were speaking Romanian. And they asked the taxi driver, what are they saying? The taxi driver was, I don't know, it's gibberish. But they just it was a lot of body language. If you listen to two babies can talk to each other. But it's all blah, 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 blah. It's all body language. It's all inflection of a question goes up, as a statement goes down, or they're very, very angry. You can talk to a 2-year-old, but a 1-year-old baby, you can kind of have a conversation with them. And they'll just go, blah, 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 blah. Well, why were you upset? Because it's all that nonverbal communication, which is much more inherent. What we pick up are the phonetics and all those other things, if that answers your Okay, anything else, sir? Have a wonderful weekend, guys. I'll take a look, see if I need to open up anybody's quizzes in the next half hour. I should be getting that. All right. Thank you very much for your time and your effort. You guys at home, you're good? You're good. You're good. You're good. Do you have any questions?